Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard their point. Now, hear the counterpoint on Libertarian Counterpoint podcasts.
And thank you for tuning in. I'm today's host, James Just, and with me today, we have a special guest, Oscar Herrera. He is a candidate for, oops, let me get this right. I hit the wrong buttons, of course. A candidate for Ohio's House's 96th district. Gotta apologize. This is like my third thing today. I'm tired. Oscar, candidates running for office, there are, it's a long journey, right, to start. How long ago did you start your campaign?
I filed my soft declaration in November of 18, seeing that at the time there was only, for my district, the race, there was a Republican and a Democrat, but the Republican dropped out at like 2 months before. And I was thinking in my head, like, oh man, it would have been a great opportunity to run that year because now it's a 50-50 shot. This year, it's 33-ish% shot of winning, given there's three candidates. So I was thinking, you know what? It's a good year to run. I've been thinking about it. Not necessarily this soon in my life, but the opportunity came up and I decided to just go for it.
Yeah, there's an opportunity kind of falls on your plate and you says, you know, it makes sense. It's, you know, and you care. And so, but why is that, right? Obviously, everybody kind of says they kind of care about their community. That's kind of the easy answer most candidates get. But I know for me, there was a lot of little things that kind of pushed me to the edge. You know, can you kind of walk yourselves through some of those?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy because like it all falls into place. Like you start paying attention on one issue. Like for me, it was in 2012 with that election. And at the time I was a Republican, worked the Romney campaign, just low-level volunteer. 2016 comes around, still paying attention to politics, leaning more libertarian. 14, kind of following the party. And you know what? These guys are making sense. Really wasn't, at that time, funny enough, I moved from California to Ohio. So kind of finding my place in Ohio. Didn't know about the Libertarian Party of Ohio until 16. That's when I joined both the state and national party and have become a dues paying member since. But really at the state level, it was more, I wasn't happy with how my state representative was taking things. He was very impersonal. I don't think I ever saw him do an event open to the general public. And I was thinking, you know what? I would love to see our elected officials do more town halls. And I was thinking, you know what? Instead of waiting for someone to do that, why don't I emulate that behavior as a candidate? So it's like more opening myself, the political system in a way, to the community and make it not so impersonal.
Yeah, and it doesn't even make sense these days, right? It is now easier than ever to communicate with different groups and with the public. I know here we have this big gig worker issue here, and as a gig worker, I tried to reach out to my local officials, but during this whole process, not one of them ever came to like our local gig worker group and said, "Hey, what do you guys think about the laws we're doing?" You know, how hard it is to have some staffer go in and say, "Hey, go look for the handful of, you know, worker groups in our district and ask what they're thinking." Instead, they listen to, you know, whatever consumer groups or unions have access.
Yeah, that's true. Like all my events I've done are open to the public. I advertised on Facebook, because that's the best way to advertise these days is social media. And some were really well attended. And and most of them, like, it makes it seem like in all those events, it was more casual. It wasn't a candidate standing up there for an hour just giving their agenda, even though I gave my issues and everything. It was more like one-on-one conversation. And in doing that, I learned that even though I'm a libertarian, someone could be a Democrat or Republican or an independent. There's a lot of issues and principles that we agree on that if you were just to go on straight party lines, you wouldn't realize that.
Yeah, what I'm finding is that there's a lot of people who are just tired of the toxic politics, so to speak. They just want to be able to have a full conversation without feeling like, you know, they're going to be hated by one side or the other. It's not even political now. It's gone kind of all sides. It's gotten really bad. Have you kind of seen that same kind of thing?
Yeah, and I mean, partly we base a lot of our identity in politics. Like, oh, I'm a Republican and I'm a Democrat, or I'm a Libertarian in some cases.
Yeah.
We really dig our feet into our political parties, and while it provides good structure to be involved in political system, we have to step away from our party and just reach people where they're at as human beings and just have that heart to heart conversation.
Yeah, as representatives, we're actually not representing our party. We're asking to represent our friends and neighbors and people who actually completely disagree with us, right? And making sure that they feel heard. If you can't have their way, they can at least feel heard, and that's kind of our roles, right?
Yeah, and exactly, because like, for example, like libertarians are like, we have our agendas, what we want to do, toe the party line, but then when you start talking to people, they bring up issues that you never really considered. Like, for example, I was talking to a librarian who was talking about double dipping, and I had an idea of what she meant. It's like, oh, what's your problems with it? Do you support her? And it's like, no, it makes it hard for us to get our pensions. Why should someone retire, get a pension, but also a salary when they get another job that's both taxpayer funded? And I'm like, and I agreed with her. And she felt really happy that she had the opportunity to talk to a candidate about an issue that mattered to her because that impacts her. And at the same token, makes me consider like, all right, these are different issues that I have to brush up on. And even though I didn't know a lot about the issue, I just had her lead the conversation. Like, okay, what do you mean by this? And sort of questions, like mirroring her dialogue. So she felt like that I actually cared, and I did, because this is a lady who's going to be voting for me, hopefully, and I wanted to make her feel that she was listened to.
Yeah, it's essentially you take what is active listening, if you want to go into the kind of the psychologist thing. You want to make sure that the person knows you're listening. I mean, there's a handful of techniques you can use to do that, but you want to make sure that they're actually understanding that, yes, I've heard you, I listened to you, even if I can't necessarily agree with you, even if I can't give you what you need or what you're asking for politically, policy wise, I can at least make sure you've been heard, that I've heard you, and that I've comprehended and understood and actually gave it its due thought. Right. I think that's what we're missing a lot these days, especially when all these protests and that going around. There's so much of that middle ground conversation that's just not being taken place in the public. It's kind of disturbing. And it's nice to see that a young politician like yourself kind of sees that whole same thing, that we've led ourselves to this. We've led ourselves to this danger, and that the way to fix it is kind of our grassroots level. You just gotta get down there and fix it. It's nice to see. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like I was listening to an interview and with a former like Prime Minister of Australia, I believe, and he said that you can't get good public policy out of bad public discourse, and that's kind of what we're seeing. Like, we're having this very tenuous political discourse, very grounded in our ideology, when at the end of the day we need to shed that skin and say, like I mentioned earlier, have those heart-to-heart conversations, set some ground rules in our conversations, like, hey, I'll respect you, you respect me. And the moment those rules get broken, then we really don't have any good public policy coming out. That's why we have all these horrible bills coming up, all these bad issues coming up, because we're not having those good conversations.
Yeah, and what's actually been most astounding to me is when I be able to take a minute back and kind of step back and think about the person I was, just a year ago or 2 years ago. For you, it's 2 years. It's been a 2-year journey. But, a couple of years ago, I tried to run for office, and we had issues with our signatures, so we didn't make it. This year we were successful, yay. But it's been a long time. What's the difference between the man Oscar Herrera was before he filed those papers and the man you are now?
I think the biggest difference is like the level of responsibility I've taken on, the more care, at least in the way I speak, in the way, because like before, I like writing and speaking kind of struggled with it, trying to convey the message I wanted. So now I'm actually like taking a step back and that bleeds into my personal life, or like, right, what do I actually want to say? What do I want to convey? Like, what's the purpose of what I'm saying? So like my articulation has gotten a little bit better. It's nowhere where I was 2 years ago, but getting my point across has become a little bit easier. which I struggled with in the beginning of all this.
Yeah, I know for me, it's, you know, 1 minute you're just a guy who has an opinion and you get to express it, you know, even if me, I'm on TV. And then the next minute I'm walking in a grocery store and someone says, hey, are you guys talking about libertarians, because he'd seen me on TV. I was still in my TV outfit. I'd literally just gotten home on my way home from the studio. And he says, are you guys going to do anything about this AB5 thing? And I said, I don't know. And so I looked around and I said, well, there's no one else. I guess that means it's me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I went, and that's kind of the moment I decided to run. And so now I'm a community leader, and I have to you have to think differently, right? You no longer get to think as I'm just me. You have to think about so many more things. It's almost hard to wrap your head around how many things there are to think about now.
Yeah, that's true. It's like when I was first doing like research for my districts, like, oh, let's see how many people voted or registered voters. It's like 84,000. And I'm just like, there's no way I could reach all 84,000, shake their hands and say, hey, vote for me. But it's such a crazy thing because when I was like 17, I was like, you know, I'm going to run for office eventually. But that's like when I'm like 35, in my 40s. I never thought I would be running for office at 24. Well, at that time I was 22, 23. So it's like a lot shifted. And it's crazy because one of my friends came up to me not too long ago and said, hey, Oscar, I'm kind of intimidated by you at this point. Like, why? Because you're doing such an ambitious thing that like no one our age is really thinking about doing, and you're actually doing it. So it's like when putting in those terms, it's like, whoa, there is like a gravitas to running for office that at that moment kind of kicked in for me. So it's like, it's a crazy thing that I'm running for office at this age.
Yeah, well, that's one of those things. That's kind of those moments you realize, you know, I am a community leader, you know, for kind of like I always go for better or for worse. I'm a community leader now. And so I have to, you know, try to do my part, kind of go out and you do the best you can, and you hope that it's good enough. And if it's not, you learn how to do better the next time. And for me, I hope, you know, trying to do that. And I try to do it as openly and openly as publicly as possible. There's a story about Benjamin Franklin that I always like to relate to libertarians. He goes, it wasn't enough to be seen being busy. I mean, it wasn't enough to be busy. You have to be seen being busy. So when he was not busy at his printing shop, he would actually fill his cart with paper and push it up and down the street. And so people would say, hey, that Benjamin Franklin, he's an ambitious guy. When he needs something done, they'd go ask him about it. And so it's not enough for you to actually get the work done. You have to do it enough in public so people can see you working without it seeming like you're trying too hard to be seen. It's a very hard and strange kind of world that it lives in. So, but it's a hard line to walk. But that's kind of what community leaders and trying to become a community leader is about.
Yeah, it's like I went to a candidate event with the press and everything, and some candidates just came in, signed in, shook some hands, and just left, and then didn't hang around and talk to anyone really. Build relationships with the press and whatnot, and it was very interesting. And as you said, being community leaders, it's like now that you put yourself out there, it's kind of hard to go back because like, you already have that platform. They already know your name, your face, and what you believe in, and they know you're someone they could come to about the issues. So it's going to be kind of weird because I've always been like a very private, never like to put myself out there. And now that I'm out there, it's like people are asking me all these questions. Like, and I work in retail, so people recognize me like, hey, you're that kid running for office. I'm like, well, yes, I am. And then like, oh, what's your thoughts on this? And I have those conversations like 3-4 times a week. And it's just weird.
You know, you've kind of changed, right? You're no longer just the guy. Now you're someone people can turn to, and you kind of you chose that burden willfully, right? It's not like it's a burden that someone slapped on you. You decided, well, there's this big heavy backpack, right? It's got rocks and all kinds of trouble and all kinds of potential pitfalls in it, but I'm going to strap it on my back and I'm going to go carry it with me on through life because I want to help my community. And I think it's a great thing that someone your age is doing it. I had to wait till I'm like 50, and you know, I raised my family. Your age, I had what? How old are you, Oscar? 25?
24. But yeah.
24. I had 3 kids at that stage, so I was busy. I had 3 jobs, 3 kids. But it's nice to see, someone like yourself who's kind of taking that other role and decided to be a community leader as a single 23-year-old man. Most single 24-year-old men are home watching Tiger King or playing video games all night, where you're off going to community events. I find that awesome. I just really do. It's from an old guy's perspective. I just find it great. The future is in good hands from what I see.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I hope to, especially a lot of my libertarian mentors are much older, and that's what I hear. You know what, you're doing a good job. It's crazy that someone says oh, how ambitious you are, and I'm like, I never consider myself an ambitious person, so it's kind of weird to ascribe that adjective to myself. So yeah, I appreciate your kind words. Yeah,
well, and I don't even think it's necessarily ambitious, right? It's to other people it seems ambitious, but to those of us, those handful of us who kind of want to do this for the good of others, it's not for our own ambition. I'd rather be able to be sitting home playing video games and delivering Amazon packages. I really didn't want to do this, but there was no one else to, and my community's hurting. And I couldn't sit still any longer. I've gotten my age, my kids are old, my kids are grown up, they've got families of their own. I couldn't sit still any longer. And so that's kind of why I got involved. There's, those many reasons. There's 50,000 of them. Any one of those gets removed and I don't run for office. I was talking to a friend of mine here locally, and he said, I kind of feel like George Washington, right? You don't want to do it. You really don't want to be president. You really don't want to be the general of the army and all that stuff, but just darn it, if there's no one else to do it, anybody else will do it, will screw it up, and they won't walk away when they're done. And he knew he would walk away. And so that's why he decided to be, okay, fine, I'll do it. I don't want to. It's kind of like a grumpy, reluctant warrior. But once you strap the suit on, you're on for the duration, right?
Yeah, that's kind of my same reason. It's I saw local politics, followed the last pretty much 2 elections for that race, and they were all except for one time, the last 4 was unopposed. The Republican lost, but I was thinking, man, when is someone going to step up, bring some common sense, some liberty, return to those American values of liberty, small government, personal responsibility? When is that person going to come up? And I was like, wait, I'm somebody. I could do this.
Yeah. Well, then one day you walk by the mirror. Oh, wait, that person is me, right? I've got these set of skills, and maybe it's not the set of skills that other people think you should have, but you know what? They are useful. And especially in a house, in an assembly or in a house, when you've got kind of that wide group of people, it's not, you don't have to be an expert on any one issue. Oddly enough, you're probably better off not being an expert on any one issue, so you can relate to everybody. And so, because your job is actually to make people feel like they've been heard. And it's not to dictate your policies. It's not to have some 10-point plan, because no one's 10-point plan ever gets implemented anyway. It's your job to relate to people, make sure people feel heard, and make sure that the bureaucracy is kind of running and doing what it's supposed to. Right? Oversight. I think that's my big issue is oversight. No one's overseeing anything these days. It's a mess. But another thing with the campaign, how about you with campaign finance laws? Did they give you a big a headache as they give me?
Oh, yeah, they do, because someone tried to do a raffle for my campaign, and then I was notified it wasn't legal, so we had to call it off. I actually never really got off the floor, but someone wanted to rifle a handgun for my campaign, and we can't do that in Ohio. It would have been really cool. This guy has connections and built that, get those funds in, but we can't do that. But yeah, I have a small packet in my campaign folder regarding campaign finance, what we could do.
Yeah, we got a big thick book here in California. It took me 3 phone calls in an hour to figure out if I could spend $25.
Yeah.
And I'm going, I wouldn't so much mind if they actually did anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
but they actually don't do anything.
Yeah, it's I wanted to run Facebook ads, and I was like, oh, can I do that? And it's I have to go through Facebook's standards and then Ohio standards, and is everything to code? I'm like, oh, finally I could do something about it. But that was like a 2-week process.
Oh, well, 2 years ago when I tried to run and we failed, I went through tried to get through the Facebook process. It took me 3 weeks to prove that I wasn't a Russian bot. Literally,
Yeah.
and by that time that we'd failed to get the signatures done, so it wasn't even didn't even matter. And so it was like, it's just so frustrating. It's, it's a small candidate, but if you're a big candidate, right? If you're one of the major parties, you just write a check and you get a staffer to take care of it. It's not such a big deal. And
Yeah.
It's those small candidates, the small independent third-party candidates that these campaign finance laws really hurt. And it's so sad because those things give me a headache. It's the biggest reason why I wouldn't run is actually campaign finance laws.
Oh yeah, I try to keep. Yeah, for that reason, I try to keep my overhead, like what we spend, very minimal. I think the only really recurring cost is our website, and that's only like $20 a month, and so it's very minimally spent. But also because we hate to do the filing reports every time it comes up, and making sure we have all the receipts, and so I'm just like, if we don't need to spend the money, we won't. Any free media we could get, we'll take. And I think the biggest expense we had so far, that's one time, is when we had to host Ken Armstrong for president here in my district. But that was just for a venue and just the cost of the facility. But apart from that, I don't think I've ever spent anything much bigger than that.
No, we got through the whole kind of primary thing. We kind of snuck in. We did. No one was opposed, and there's this period. If there's no one opposed, you only have to get like 50 signatures or something like that to get in. And we literally got into the November elections without spending a dime. We didn't spend any money. We filed out some paperwork, spent some time to drive around. Suppose you spent some gas money, but we didn't spend any money. And then because our biggest issue would have been some pro AB5 group coming in just to keep us off the ballot in November, then we just shut everything down for 3 weeks before the election, because all we needed was one write-in vote, and we move on to November. Yeah. And so ours was get the signatures done, then kind of shut everything down, pretend like we're incompetent, and right, so no one can see that we're doing it, so no one gets scared, and then we can move on to November without spending any money. So that's kind of what we did. It's kind of the world's most bizarre political strategy, but it worked. So you can pat yourselves on the back. Did you guys have to do any kind of weird things like that to kind of on this kind of weird journey?
No, not really. I think I collected the majority of my signatures by myself. I mapped out, all right, what's the longest stretch of road that I could take and to get the most signatures. And I spent like 4 hours on that road going back and forth to my car. The worst part is like halfway through it started raining. So I was like, you know what? I'll stick around. I got all my signatures, at least 90% of my signatures that day. I already had 10%. And then I was dripping in rain, freezing rain, cold, but I had every signature I needed to get on the ballot. And I turned it in. And then once I saw that I was a candidate, I was just all the aches and pains just went away, because I'm like, all right, this is just the hardest part of this campaign, is to get on the ballot, especially in Ohio, where we have such crappy ballot access laws for us. I mean, we only need for my campaign needed 25. They needed 75. I think I got around 60. But at the same time, it's like if someone challenged it, then I could have been kicked off the ballot. All that hard work for the previous year just gone. All those relationships just gone. And I would hate to tell my supporters hey, I got kicked off the ballot.
Yeah, I know that's actually the worst feeling. Sorry, we didn't make our goals. Thanks for all helping out. That's the worst actually feeling in the planet. But making that, it's a big victory, right? You get on the ballot. Yes, we're on the ballot. It's a big thing.
It was good to give them my money. Here's your filing fee. All right, I'm on the ballot. And now it's like, can I get the support to win the election? And hopefully I do win the election. It would be such a good win for the party at national level to have a state legislator, but also Ohio, because it would change the dialogue for ballot access laws for us. Because imagine I win as a libertarian in the state legislature, and now they have to have a conversation. All right, this guy is a state representative for a political party that we're trying to like make disappear. So
Yeah.
how does that work out?
Yeah, it kind of throws a wrench in all their program. I keep telling everybody, says, hey, if you really want to just fix the establishment, all you got to do is elect a third party guy once, and it'll send the message you want. And then once we're in, they'll listen to us, right? So
winning cures all ills. So
it really does.
It's like once you're in, once I'm in, it's like, all right, this guy is serious. The Libertarian Party is serious. And honestly, like, even though we have a place for our presidential candidates and that whole process, we really need to focus on state level candidates like legislators, because that's where it'll make it easier for the other down ballot candidates easier. Like, yeah, it's good to get our 5% to maintain ballot access. Now, do we have a state legislator on our side to overrule those ballot access laws? So we don't have to worry about that next time, where we could focus on building the party, maintaining those voters and all that.
Yeah. So I'm going to put where can they go to get help to that? I can speak. It's been a long day, I swear.
Yeah, it's been
where can people go to learn more about you, Oscar?
Well, if you see the banner, it has my website, electoscarherrera.com. My Facebook page is going to be way more active, so check that out. Just type in Oscar Herrera for 96th District on Facebook, and then there you'll have all my links to my other social media accounts.
All right. Oscar, it's been great to have you on. You're a hardworking, dedicated young man. I've been watching you kind of on social media. I find you awesome. I find you inspiring. I wanted to thank you for coming on.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate those kind words. It brings a pep in my step, and I may be young, but I talk like an old timer.
And for the rest of you, thanks for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Visit libertariancounterpoint.com for all our updates. And you can find us all on the social media things just by Libertarian Counterpointing. Yeah, hit the buttons and everybody knows what to do. All right, Oscar, thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.